Declassified, a 75-cent piece of wire, an M14 rifle that shouldn't have worked, and one Marine who defied military law to take an impossible 800-meter shot. In the next 60 minutes, you will learn the untold story of Sergeant Mitchell Townsend, a man who faced a court-martial but instead saved 2,000 lives, and the enemy snipers who never saw it coming. The ridge vibrated, a low, gut-punching tremor that wasn't from the distant rolling thunder of artillery. It was closer. It was the frequency of fear, and through it all, Sergeant Mitchell Townsend was perfectly still. His face was pressed so hard against the stock of his M14 rifle that he could feel the warm grain of the wood through his sweat. His fingers, calloused and steady, weren't on the trigger. Not yet. They were tracing a crude, almost insulting modification he'd attached the night before. A loop of simple copper wire, 75 cents of hardware, coiled tight around the gas system. It had no business being on a United States Marine Corps sniper rifle. It was a violation. It was, by the book, an offense that could land him in the brig. But through his red-field scope, the enemy seemed to laugh at the book. The North Vietnamese Army position was impossibly distant, 800 meters, maybe more. They were moving with casual confidence, setting up their own rifles, the dreaded Russian Dragunov SVD. They knew, as every soldier in this valley knew, that they were safe. An M14 couldn't touch them. Not from here, but they didn't know about Sergeant Townsend, and they didn't know about his wire. It was August 7th, 1967. A date seared into his memory. 10 miles south of the demilitarized zone, Quang Tri Province. His spotter, Lance Corporal Franklin Riley, was shifting beside him, his voice a dry whisper. "Staff Sergeant's gonna have your hide when he sees that, Mitch. They'll court-martial you." Townsend didn't answer. His eye never left the scope. He watched the lead NVA sniper settle in. In minutes, that rifle would be aimed at the valley below, where hundreds of Marines were about to walk into a perfect killing field. Riley hissed, "I count 4. Too far, we radio it in. Let Artie handle it." Townsend knew artillery would be too late. His finger finally moved, finding the cold steel of the trigger. He began his breathing rhythm. In, hold, out. "Sarge, what are you doing? You can't hit that." A final exhale. The world narrowed to a single point of light. "Watch me." The rifle bucked against his shoulder with a violence he'd never felt before. It was the first sign his theory was right. Through the scope, 800 meters away, the NVA sniper vanished. Before Riley could even draw a breath, Townsend was already working the bolt, fighting the unfamiliar pressure. He was acquiring his second target. To understand how a single Marine could defy the laws of ballistics with 75 cents of wire, you first have to understand the man. You have to go back to a place that couldn't be more different than the jungles of Vietnam. Back to Greenwood, Mississippi. Mitchell Townsend was born on April 18, 1944. He was the son of a sharecropping family, the third of 5 children. This was the segregated South, a world of rigid, uncrossable lines. His father, Elijah Townsend, was a man of quiet dignity and simmering frustration. He had served with distinction in a segregated unit during World War II, fighting for a freedom abroad that he was still denied at home. Elijah returned from Europe a hero, only to find the same colored-only signs. But he instilled one thing in his children: a fierce, unshakable belief that excellence could not be denied forever. "My daddy used to say, 'This country ain't perfect, but it's worth fighting for,'" Townsend would recall in a rare 1975 interview. "He taught me that sometimes you got to earn respect before they're ready to give it." The Townsend family owned exactly one firearm, an old Remington bolt-action rifle. Elijah used it for hunting deer and squirrel, putting food on the table when the sharecropping income wasn't enough. It was a tool of survival. and it was treated with profound respect. By the age of 8, young Mitchell had developed an uncanny talent with that rifle. He could consistently hit targets that grown men struggled to see. It wasn't just good eyesight, it was an intuitive understanding of the weapon, of wind, of drop. His father nurtured this skill, despite knowing the complications it might bring. In Mississippi back then, Townsend later explained, being known as the black boy who could shoot wasn't necessarily something folks celebrated. But my daddy said, "Son, God gives gifts for a reason. Don't you dare hide yours." This gift for precision, however, would have remained a simple party trick if not for the second pillar of his upbringing, his mind. Education opportunities in segregated Greenwood were severely limited. The colored schools were underfunded, overcrowded, and given leftover textbooks. But Mitchell excelled, particularly in mathematics and physics. He wasn't just good at memorizing formulas, he was obsessed with understanding how things worked. His high school science teacher, Mrs. Eleanor Jackson, recognized a potential that the system was designed to suppress. She saw a mind that didn't just accept answers, but questioned the very principles behind them. Risking her own job, Mrs. Jackson provided Mitchell with advanced textbooks, college-level physics and engineering manuals that the school wasn't supposed to have. While other boys were working the fields, Mitchell was devouring chapters on internal ballistics, thermodynamics, and harmonic resonance. "That woman changed my life," Townsend would later say. "She showed me that understanding the science of something, really knowing why things work the way they do, that's power no one can take from you." That power was the secret weapon he was building, long before he ever touched a military rifle. He wasn't just a good shot. He was becoming a man who understood the physics of the shot. After graduating high school in 1962, Townsend stared at a future of limited options: factory jobs in the North, or following his father into the fields. Neither path satisfied the burning curiosity or the quiet ambition his father and teacher had fostered. But the nation was changing. President Kennedy was pushing for the integration of the armed forces, not just on paper, but in practice. Townsend saw an opportunity, not just to escape Mississippi, but to prove himself on a stage where, supposedly, excellence was the only color that mattered. Against his mother's wishes, but with his father's quiet, knowing blessing, Mitchell Townsend enlisted in the United States Marine Corps in January 1963. Basic training at Parris Island, South Carolina, was a crucible. It was designed to break men down and rebuild them as Marines. For the few black recruits in Townsend's platoon, the crucible was even hotter. Drill instructors were merciless. Fellow recruits, raised on the same prejudices as his Mississippi neighbors, were often hostile. But it was here, in the smoke and the fury, that Townsend found his voice. And he found it on the rifle range. "First time they put a rifle in my hands," Townsend recalled, "the instructor tried to take it back, smirked at me, said, 'You sure you know which end the bullet comes out, boy?' I just asked for my ammo and a chance to shoot." When the targets were scored, the snickering stopped. Townsend qualified expert. He hit 48 out of 50 targets, including consistent hits at ranges many other recruits struggled with. His performance was so precise, so mechanically perfect, that it couldn't be ignored. His drill instructor, Staff Sergeant Raymond Wilkins, a hard-bitten veteran, pulled him aside. Wilkins looked at Townsend's score sheet, then at the young recruit. "Private," Wilkins growled. "I don't care if you're purple with yellow polka dots. You shoot like that. You got a future in my course." It was the first time Townsend realized his gift was more than just a skill. In the Marine Corps, it was currency. After basic training, his exceptional marksmanship scores earned him additional weapons training. But the path to the elite scout sniper units was largely closed. In the mid-1960s, it was a small, insular community, and not one that readily welcomed black Marines. Instead, he was assigned to an infantry unit. He served his first enlistment with distinction. rising in rank, earning the respect of his superiors not just for his shooting, but for his technical mind. He became the platoon's unofficial armorer, the man who could fix any weapon, who understood why a jam was happening, not just how to clear it. When his first enlistment ended in 1966, he could have gone home. He could have taken his honorable discharge and his GI Bill benefits and built a new life. But the war in Vietnam was escalating. He re-enlisted. He specifically requested deployment. He had no idea that his shooting skills and the physics he'd learned from those forbidden textbooks would soon be all that stood between his fellow Marines and total annihilation. He was assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, the famous Dark Horse Battalion, with a storied history stretching back to World War I. By the time Sergeant Townsend joined them for their deployment to Vietnam in 1966, the war was changing. American forces were in their build-up phase. Commanding officers were operating under strategies developed for conventional European warfare. But this wasn't Europe. This was the jungle. The 3rd Battalion was assigned to Quang Tri Province, the northernmost province of South Vietnam. Their area of operations included some of the most hotly contested, brutal territory in the country. It was cut by strategic hills and ridge lines overlooking key transportation routes the NVA needed to move men and supplies south. And it was here, in early 1967, that American intelligence identified a troubling and deadly new development. North Vietnamese army units were receiving shipments of a new weapon, a Soviet-designed, purpose-built sniper rifle, the Dragunov SVD. It was semi-automatic. It was rugged, and it was lethally accurate. Colonel Thomas Richards, the commanding officer of the 5th Marines, summarized the new threat in a field report dated March 12, 1967. Enemy snipers are engaging our forces from distances our weapons cannot effectively counter. We are suffering casualties before our men can even identify where the fire is coming from. This was the new nightmare of Quang Tri. The Dragunov SVD was a squad support weapon, purpose-built for accurate fire out to 800 meters, and even beyond in capable hands. By comparison, the standard American M14, the rifle Townsend carried, was a fine battle rifle, but it was designed for infantry engagements, with an effective range of approximately 500 meters, even with a scope. This 300-meter gap became a killing zone. NVA snipers could set up on a distant ridge, completely safe, and pick off American troops with virtual impunity. Between January and June 1967, the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, lost 17 men to enemy sniper fire. All of them hit at distances beyond the effective range of their own weapons. The psychological impact on the troops was profound. Marines began calling them ghost rounds, bullets that seemed to come from nowhere, from an enemy they couldn't see and, worse, couldn't fight back against. Morale was plummeting. Patrols were terrified, knowing they could be shot at any second, from any direction, with no way to return fire. Major General Bruno Hawkmouth, commanding the 3rd Marine Division, was furious. He requested additional counter-sniper training. He demanded new equipment. But the realities of the military supply chain were slow. The new, specialized M40 sniper rifle, a modified version of the Remington 700, was in limited supply. Priority was given to established sniper units, the same units that had been slow to integrate. It was against this backdrop of failure, frustration, and mounting casualties that Sergeant Townsend made a fateful decision. If the official channels couldn't solve the range disparity quickly enough, he would find another way. The thing about being in combat, Townsend would later explain, is that suddenly all those rules about who's allowed to do what, they don't matter so much anymore. What matters is who's still breathing at the end of the day. His opportunity, born from tragedy, came in July 1967. Due to combat losses, the battalion's scout sniper platoon was critically short-handed. Sergeant Townsend with his expert qualification and his reputation as a weapons guru, was temporarily assigned to the platoon. He wasn't officially trained as a sniper. He was, in their eyes, just a replacement, a warm body to fill a slot. What they didn't know was that Sergeant Mitchell Townsend had spent the last 6 months studying. He wasn't just cleaning his rifle. He was analyzing it. He wasn't just observing the enemy. He was reverse engineering their tactics. He had no idea that this temporary assignment would place him, and his forbidden knowledge of physics, in a position to change the course of the war in Quang Tri. One unauthorized modification at a time. Sergeant Townsend had a theory, but no authority. He knew the physics, but the Marine Corps only knew the regulations. And as he walked into the sniper platoon, he was an outsider about to face a problem that was killing the men in charge. The monsoon rains had turned the red clay of Quang Tri Province into a slippery morass. Sergeant Townsend reported to his new unit at Combat Outpost Eagle, a collection of sandbagged positions perched atop a hill overlooking the DMZ. The welcome was cold. The platoon leader, Staff Sergeant Walter Cunningham, was a career Marine who believed in two things: the Corps and the men he had trained himself. Townsend was neither. "I don't care what your qualification scores are, Townsend," Cunningham said, not bothering to look up from his map. "Scout snipers train together, fight together. You're here because I'm short-handed, not because you belong." The platoon consisted of 12 Marines, organized into 6 two-man teams. Townsend was paired with Lance Corporal Franklin Riley, a wiry 19-year-old from Oregon. Riley had a gift for reading wind, but a nervous disposition that had already earned him the nickname Jumpy. Riley's last partner caught a round through the scope 3 weeks ago, Cunningham told Townsend bluntly, finally making eye contact. "So don't take it personally if he's not eager to get cozy with you." The platoon was equipped with a mix of weapons. The 2 senior teams had the new, prioritized M40 sniper rifles. The other 4, including Townsend's, carried the standard M14 with a mounted scope. The disparity was not lost on Townsend. "How come we don't all get the M40s?" he asked during his first equipment briefing. Gunnery Sergeant Howard Pratt, the platoon's senior NCO, scoffed. "There's 8 M40s in the entire regiment, Sergeant. You think they grow on trees? Besides, the M14 is a fine weapon in capable hands." What Pratt didn't say, but what every Marine knew, was that the M14, even in capable hands, couldn't touch the Dragunov. Townsend learned this firsthand. 3 days later. During his first week, Townsend and Riley conducted 3 observation missions. On their second mission, they were positioned on a ridge overlooking a trail, when a patrol from Alpha Company moved through the valley below them. They were approximately 700 meters away. Then, the ghost rounds began. Shots rang out from a distant opposing ridge line. 2 Marines from the patrol fell immediately. The squad scattered, scrambling for cover in the sparse vegetation. There was none. 3 more Marines were hit. "Target! 11 o'clock, Riley called out, his eye pressed to the spotting scope. 900 meters. NVA sniper team, at least 2 of them. Townsend brought his M14 to bear, his cheek on the stock. He found them in his scope, and his blood ran cold. Both men knew the truth. The enemy was well beyond the effective range of his rifle. They could observe. They could report. They could watch. But they could not engage. All they could do was radio the coordinates to the command post and request artillery support. The artillery took 17 minutes to arrive. By then, the NVA snipers were gone, and 5 Marines were dead. 5 men, Townsend and Riley, had watched die through their scopes, completely unable to help. That night, back at the outpost, the other Marines drank or played cards, trying to forget. Townsend sat alone, cleaning his rifle with methodical, furious precision. His mind wasn't replaying the horror. It was dissecting a problem. The other members of the platoon gave him a wide berth. They assumed he was just another new guy, rattled by his first real look at the war. They didn't realize he was formulating a theory. He field-stripped the M14, his hands moving with practiced grace. His attention focused on one part, the gas system. He remembered the physics textbooks Mrs. Jackson had given him. He thought about internal ballistics. The M14, like most modern rifles, used a portion of the expanding gas from a fired cartridge to cycle the action, to eject the spent casing and load a new round. This gas was bled off through a small port in the barrel. The standard gas system was calibrated for reliability. It was a compromise, designed to function in all conditions, from mud to sand. But Townsend had a theory. What if that compromise was costing lives? The Dragunov isn't magic, he muttered to himself, his voice so low no one could hear. It's just engineering. The Russian rifle was designed to push its bullet faster, farther. The M14, he theorized, could do the same. What if he could change the balance? What if he restricted the gas bleed off? If less gas was diverted to cycle the action, more energy would remain behind the bullet. That would mean a higher muzzle velocity. A higher velocity would mean a flatter trajectory. A flatter trajectory would mean extended range. He was sketching diagrams in his mind, calculating pressures. There was a trade-off, and it was a dangerous one. With less gas, the rifle's action might fail to cycle. It might jam. It might become, in effect, a single-shot rifle in the middle of a firefight. It was a calculated massive risk, and it violated every weapon maintenance protocol in the Marine Corps. If caught, he'd be done. But the memory of those 5 dead Marines, that weighed more than the threat of punishment. He needed materials. The next morning, Townsend sought out Corporal Dennis Martinez, a Marine who worked in the battalion supply section. Martinez had a reputation for being able to acquire items that weren't officially available. "I need copper wire," Townsend told him, his voice low. "About 16 gauge, the kind they use for electrical work. And I need it quiet." Martinez eyed him suspiciously. "What's it worth to you?" "My next 3 packs of cigarettes." "Make it 5. And I don't tell anyone about those PX items that keep finding their way to the Vietnamese village down the road." Martinez smirked. "Always knew you were too observant for your own good, Townsend. You'll have your wire by this evening." True to his word, Martinez delivered a small coil of copper wire to Townsend's bunk that night. The simple material had cost 75 cents at the base exchange. Its value would soon prove incalculable. While the rest of the platoon played cards or wrote letters home, Townsend retreated to a quiet corner of the outpost with his rifle, the wire, and a flashlight. Working by the dim light, he carefully, precisely modified the gas system of his M14. He created a rudimentary, hand-fashioned regulator. It was crude, but his understanding of the physics was precise. He was restricting the gas port, forcing the rifle to send more of its power down the barrel. As he was reassembling the rifle, fitting the stock back into place, a shadow fell over him. It was Lance Corporal Riley. "What are you doing to that rifle, Sarge?" Riley whispered, his eyes wide as he saw the glint of new wire where no wire should be. Townsend considered lying. He looked at the young Marine who would be spotting for him, the man whose life would depend on this rifle. He decided against it. "I'm changing the rules, Riley. The Dragunov has range because it's designed to push that bullet faster. Our M14s can do the same, if we help them a little." Riley's face went pale. That's against regulations. That's a dozen regulations. They'll bust you back to private, Sarge. They'll court-martial you." Townsend clicked the trigger guard into place, the sound sharp in the quiet night. He looked up at Riley. "Only if it doesn't work. If it works, they'll be too busy giving me medals to worry about regulations." The younger Marine just shook his head. "You're crazy. You know that? And if that thing blows up in your face, I'll be the one dragging your sorry ass back to base." Townsend smiled, the first genuine smile since he'd joined the platoon. That's what spotters are for, isn't it? Neither man knew that their partnership was about to be put to the ultimate test. The pre-dawn briefing on August 7, 1967, was tense. Intelligence had reported significant NVA movement in the valley below Combat Outpost Eagle. Captain Gerald Morrison, the battalion operations officer, laid out the situation. We have elements of the 7th Marine Regiment moving to reinforce positions here and here. Approximately 2,000 Marines will be transiting through this valley over the next 48 hours. Your job is to provide overwatch and early warning. Staff Sergeant Cunningham began assigning positions. Townsend, Riley, you'll take Observation Post 3 on the eastern ridge. You'll have visibility of the main approach routes. He fixed Townsend with a hard stare. Standard protocol. Observe and report. Do not engage unless directly threatened or specifically authorized. Townsend just nodded, feeling the weight of the rifle on his back. The rifle that was now, technically, a piece of illegal contraband. The rifle that had not yet been fired. The mission was set. The rifle was modified, but it was completely untested in combat. As Townsend and Riley moved out into the pre-dawn darkness, they were walking a razor's edge. One man was trusting his life to a 75-cent piece of wire, and the other was about to find out if Sergeant Townsend was a genius or a dead man. Townsend and Riley were on their way to Observation Post 3. Below them, 2,000 Marines were preparing to move, and in Townsend's hands was an untested, illegal rifle, with the potential to either save them all or fail so catastrophically it would cost everyone their lives. Townsend and Riley moved silently through the wet underbrush. The eastern ridge was a 3-kilometer hike through difficult terrain, and they needed to be in position before first light. "You actually going to use that thing?" Riley whispered as they climbed, gesturing to Townsend's M14. "If I have to." "And if it doesn't work?" Townsend paused, the weight of the moment pressing in. "Then I guess I'll have died trying something instead of watching more Marines die while I follow orders." Riley fell silent. They reached Observation Post 3 just as the first hints of dawn lightened the eastern sky. It was a shallow depression, camouflaged with vegetation, but it offered a perfect sweeping view of the valley and the NVA infiltration routes. The morning passed with agonizing slowness. They logged local farmers, birds, nothing. Then, midday, the first elements of the 7th Marines appeared. Columns of men, moving cautiously. By 1400 hours, nearly 500 Marines were visible in the valley. The reinforcement was proceeding perfectly. At 1438 hours, everything changed. "Movement," Riley said suddenly, his voice tight. "North Ridge, 2 o'clock. Multiple figures." Townsend swung his scope. He saw them. At least 6 NVA soldiers, setting up machine guns. And among them, 2 carried the distinctive, dreaded profile of the Dragunov SVD range. Townsend's voice was calm, cold. Riley checked his map and rangefinder. 820 meters to the nearest. 850 to the ridge position, well beyond the 500-meter limit. Deep inside the killing zone. "Command, this is Sierra 3, Riley radioed, his voice betraying the tremor he felt. "We have visual on enemy force, North Ridge. 6 to 8 individuals, including sniper teams. Request permission to engage. Over." The radio crackled back. The voice was dismissive. "Sierra 3, negative on engagement. Range is beyond your capability. We're scrambling air support. Maintain observation." Riley looked at Townsend, his face a mask of frustration. "Air support is 20 minutes out. Those Marines in the valley are dead." Townsend watched through his scope. The lead NVA sniper was already in position, his spotter beside him. He was aiming down, into the valley. At the exposed Marines, the moment had arrived. Townsend settled his modified M14 onto the sandbag rest. His mind, trained by Mrs. Jackson's physics books, became a computer. Distance, 820 meters. Elevation, Wind, negligible. Bullet velocity, estimated. What are you doing? Riley hissed. Command said no. Command thinks we can't hit them, Townsend replied, his eye now pressed to the scope. They don't know what this rifle can do. And neither do you, Sarge. If you miss, you give away our position. They'll zero in on us before you get a second shot off. Then I better make the first one count. Townsend settled his breathing. 4 seconds in. Hold. 4 seconds out. Hold. His heartbeat slowed. The world vanished. There was only the rifle, the crosshairs, and the target. He added a significant holdover, compensating for the extreme distance. Then, between heartbeats, he squeezed the trigger. The M14 roared. It wasn't the familiar crack. It was a sharper, violent sound, with a distinct metallic ping. The recoil was brutal, slamming the rifle into his shoulder. Through the scope, he watched the NVA sniper jerk backward and collapse. A hit, an impossible hit. Riley was speechless. Then his training took over. Hit! Target down! Shift fire! Second sniper moving to cover! 10 meters right! Townsend worked the action. The bolt was stiff. The reduced gas pressure was affecting the cycle, just as he'd feared. He chambered the new round. He found the second target. He fired again. Another hit. The second NVA sniper fell. The remaining enemy soldiers were scrambling, panicked, shocked by fire coming from a distance they knew was safe. They're trying to locate us, Riley warned. Third target, machine gun, 860 meters. Townsend shifted. The action was sluggish. He manually assisted the bolt. He compensated for the greater distance. He fired. The NVA machine gunner was thrown from his weapon. Command, this is Sierra 3. Riley was on the radio, his voice electric. We have engaged enemy positions. 3 confirmed hits. Enemy snipers neutralized. Request permission to continue. The radio exploded with questions, with disbelief. But Townsend wasn't listening. Fourth target, Riley called. Radio man moving left. 840. Townsend tracked the running figure. He led him, fired. 4 shots. 4 hits. At distances the Marine Corps manual said were impossible. The remaining NVA soldiers vanished, dragging their wounded, abandoning their positions. In the valley below, the Marine columns continued their march, completely unaware of the disaster that had just been averted. Command wants us back at the OP. Immediately, Riley said, finally lowering the radio. Captain Morrison is... He doesn't sound happy, Sarge. Townsend carefully wiped down his rifle. Did you tell them about the modification? Riley hesitated. No, figured that was your story to tell. The return to combat outpost Eagle was tense. A crowd of Marines gathered as Townsend and Riley approached the command bunker. Staff Sergeant Cunningham intercepted them. What the hell happened out there, Townsend? He demanded. Command says you engaged at over 800 meters. That's not possible. Townsend met his gaze. With all due respect, Staff Sergeant, it is. He handed Cunningham the rifle. Cunningham saw the copper wire. His face darkened. You modified a service weapon. You violated regulations. Inside. Both of you. Now. Captain Morrison stood in the bunker doorway. The debriefing was intense. Morrison, along with the battalion executive officer, Major Thomas Bradford, questioned them relentlessly. Riley's log was checked. Maps were consulted. Explain exactly what you did to this weapon, Sergeant, Major Bradford said, his tone unreadable. Townsend laid out his theory. He used the terms from Mrs. Jackson's textbooks, internal ballistics, gas pressure, muzzle velocity. He explained the trade-offs, the risk to the action. The officers exchanged a look. Bradford leaned forward. Do you realize, Sergeant, that your unauthorized actions violated at least 7 different regulations? Yes, sir. And do you also realize, Bradford continued, his tone shifting, that your actions quite possibly saved the lives of hundreds of Marines in that valley today? Townsend blinked. I hope they would, sir. Bradford sat back. A patrol confirmed 4 enemy KIA at the North Ridge, including 2 with Dragunovs. Intel estimates they could have inflicted significant casualties. Here was the problem. They couldn't condone it, but they couldn't ignore it. Sergeant Townsend, Captain Morrison said, effective immediately. You are assigned to Battalion R&D. You will work with our armorers to refine this. And as for your unauthorized actions, Major Bradford added, there will be an official reprimand in your file. He paused. Unofficially, however, I expect you'll find it carries very little weight. It was the perfect military solution. Punish the infraction, but reward the innovation. Over the next 3 weeks, Townsend's crude 75-cent wire modification evolved. It became a precisely machined gas regulator that could be properly installed. Testing confirmed it. M14s could now rival the Dragunov. By early September, the first official range extension kits were being distributed to sniper teams. The technical manual credited field innovations. No name. It didn't matter. The impact was immediate. On September 23rd, during Operation Medina, Marine snipers equipped with the new modification systematically defeated NVA snipers. By the end of 1967, intelligence reported NVA tactics had changed. They no longer relied on long-range impunity. The ghost rounds had stopped. A third Marine. Division report estimated that Sergeant Townsend's innovation directly contributed to preventing over 2,000 casualties. Townsend received a Navy Achievement Medal, carefully worded to mention technical innovation without detailing the unauthorized act. He was also offered, and accepted, a slot at the formal Scout Sniper School. He completed his tour, graduated second in his class, and served as an instructor before leaving the Corps in 1971. For decades, the story remained buried, an unofficial legend among snipers. Townsend returned to civilian life, becoming a successful automotive engineer. The man who had saved thousands remained unknown until 1989. At a veterans gathering, he was recognized by his old platoon leader, the now retired Colonel Walter Cunningham. "You're the wire man," Cunningham said. "Do you have any idea how many Marines are alive because of you?" Cunningham, now a historian, documented the story. In 1991, his paper was published. The secret was out. The Marine Corps, now, was ready to celebrate him. In 1997, Mitchell Townsend was invited to the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School at Quantico as a guest of honor. There he was presented with a plaque. It bears a simple inscription beneath a copper wire. Sometimes courage means knowing when not to follow orders. Mitchell Townsend passed away in 2011. His innovation, born from Mississippi cotton fields, forbidden physics books, and the brutal reality of combat, is now a case study in empowered frontline innovation. His story proves that sometimes the most consequential changes don't come from a general's map. They come from a sergeant's mind, a 75-cent piece of wire, and the moral courage to break the rules to save lives. These are the stories that are often lost to history. The critical details, the individual acts of genius, the missing pages that change the course of a war. If you believe these stories need to be told, subscribe to WW2 Missing Pages. Help us ensure that heroes like Sergeant Mitchell Townsend are never forgotten. Click the bell so you don't miss our next investigation into the hidden chapters of history. And comment below, what other missing page of history do you want us to find?